Hello, I'm Mr. Pibbles, and welcome back to our playthrough of, to our Challenge Park series here in Planet Coaster 2. There we go. I don't know why I had so much trouble with that. So in the last episode, we came in and we finished a lot of this exterior theming for our lovely little spinning coaster Joust. And actually I've done a little bit off camera for it. As you can see here, it now has a lovely sign on it. And if we pop inside here, this is now all lit. And then we now have in here, these are now our ride vehicles, and they are all slightly customized with different shields, which I thought was kind of cool. And out the back, we've now got a little bit more stuff out here, which is all fun stuff. So what are we doing today? Well, today we've got a little bit of a TLC episode. We're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and mostly we're getting everything ready to start a new area of the park, which is all very fun. So, without further ado, let's roll that time lapse. Yes, hello and welcome to the time lapse. It's me, Mr. Time Lapse Man. That is not my name, but for today it will be. And of course, as I said right at the beginning of this, just a moment ago, we are having a bit of a this and that episode today, because we are finishing this little area, which is of course our fairytale themed area, which it isn't big. But what we do have, I quite like. And we're starting off with the photo booth for our ride Joust. You know, that was really sort of the main focus of this area, was getting Joust done. And now that Joust is done, we've got this episode to sort everything out before we move on. But yes, we're starting here with this this photo booth. We're essentially taking what we've already done in the past with these booths, and we're just copying it over. And you can see me here just trying to see what the angle's like on the photo, because of course when the photo comes out, it comes out looking alright. Well, when you set up the booth on a spinning coaster, it shows the car forwards. It doesn't show you it the way that you want it to go. So we're kind of having to here make up where it's going. So that's all fun stuff. But before we sort all of that, first we have some fencing to do, because you know this all needs fencing in, and it all needs fencing across so nobody can really walk on the grass, and it really sort of adds a bit more of a border between our hedges for the Roman ruins, and this area, which is quite nice. And it's the same with the Tiger Garden in this. It sort of again adds a little bit of that barrier, which is quite fun. And it adds, because there's just the space there that needs something doing with it, and if we just come in, place a couple more trees down, place a few shrubbery bits, then you come out with something that's looking kind of alright. So one is in no position to complain about that at all. So yeah, where we are with this is we are sort of finishing off this area, which is quite fun, because obviously we're finishing off some medieval here, but we have also started some other medieval on the channel, because I've started playing Manor Lords, which excellent game, and I thought I'd have a bit of a play with it for a new series on this channel, and it's so fun. So if that's the sort of thing that you'd be interested in watching, then please join me over there as we are building our little village. So what are we doing now? Well, we're starting to add this transitionary period between the two areas of these two areas of the park. Of course, we've already got, one of our areas sorted in terms of this area, and within the next couple of episodes we'll be moving on to our next area, which is quite exciting, which will unfortunately be the last area for now, but that we will move on to when we get there. But for now, you may ask yourself, what am I doing here? Well, I had the idea of bringing this new area down to a lower level, so that's where we're starting with it. But the main thing that I wanted to do was sort of add in a bit of a walkthrough experience, because we don't really have many walkthrough things. We've got the gardens, that's about it. So I thought I'd make something new, and what more to link these two areas than a terrain wall, but where would a terrain wall be on its own? So instead we've got a bit of a cave mining situation where we have this sort of cavern in the middle, and I was very much here inspired by the two things. Firstly, I was inspired by the castle and the Dragon Cave at Disneyland Paris, because if you have never been there, there is a dragon that sleeps under the castle, and it is quite cool, and I thought I'd put something like that in here. And the other thing is a walkthrough attraction that I used to go through to all the time when I was when it was open, and that was in Cornwall, the Flambards Amusement Park. They had the, I think it was the Gus Honeybun Burrow or whatever it was, but doing this really reminded me of that, and I thought actually it's what it reminds me of, so I might as well kind of have a bit of a play around with it like that. And I think, again, within the next couple of episodes, we will be doing another sort of walkthrough tribute to that old park, which, rest in peace, I think it's been gone. I think it's over a year now that it's been gone, which is very sad, but it is what it is. But what we've got here, of course, is this new level for terrain, which we're not getting onto that quite yet. I still need to do a major planning for that, but it's quite fun to think back and go, right at the beginning of this process, I was just doing whatever I wanted, no planning, and now here I am doing just that. I'm planning out what I'm doing in this park, just because I think it needs it. So, here we have these torches that are sitting on that side, almost as if it's, the fairytale side. But what goes the other side? Well, it's these oil lamps from a certain other pack, which is very specific, and it is that pack that we are moving on to within the next episode, which is it's going to be so fun. Well, within the next few episodes. And as I say, it is going to be incredibly fun to get in and build with it, because I have been having a bit of a think with it. And it is going to be something big. I can tell you that for free. But yeah, no, it's quite fun. I do have kind of the big plan for that, and then once that is all complete, again we are moving on to our next project. And I have had a bit of a think about where I'm going next, and I probably mentioned it once or twice, but I'm looking at doing something like a, for want of better phrasing, a studios park. Sort of something that's very much inspired by, the Disney Studios parks, but also using some IPs that I am a fan of and things that I do really enjoy. So, that could be quite fun, if you're excited for that. But yes, as I say, it's incredible to think how far we have come on this series so far, because obviously we started off very much with, just this small opening plaza in the HMS Victorious, and then we haven't really been back there in ages, but obviously we had that, then we had our little kiddie area with sort of the farm stuff, and of course with the Barnstormer. Then we moved over to the Pibbleville Raceway, which was quite fun, with all of the racetrack there, the go-karts that nobody seems to want to go on, but oh well, I'll live. So there's that, and then obviously after that we moved onto our pirate area. We had that, and then we moved on to Spook Manor for an episode. That was fun. I think I really enjoyed coming in and doing something like Spook Manor. And then we had our return coaster Sakura, which was quite fun to build, and it was quite fun to have a look at. Now, we're sticking a name on this cave now, because obviously, why wouldn't we? It is a walkthrough attraction, so it needs a name. And the name we are going for this is going to be there in a sec. You can see me having so much of a mental battle on what I'm going to name this. And we end up with Worm Mine. Because, of course, we've got the dragon inside. No, that dragon is not a worm, but that is completely fine. So, now that we've got this in, we can now move on to some other stuff. And I didn't actually get through finishing talking about everything we've done, did I? Because we then moved on to our water park, the Splash Landings, with, of course, its lovely water coaster, the Splash Boating, before indeed moving on to our multitude of gardens, and then our Roman ruins, and now we are here. So it's all fun stuff. Now I'm using these moss decals with sort of this black, this moss on it in black, almost to feel like it's been kind of destroyed by ash. You know, I'd quite like some pieces to sort of do that, but there we go. And sticking a dragon motif in there, it just looks quite nice. And then it needs a little bit more adorning. So these Viking figureheads are going to go in. And they look a little silly, but then, you know, it doesn't matter if it looks silly. It's just fun. It is just fun. But yeah, and you know, the other bit of joy about creating this series is coming up with all the lore about it. You know, I had those episodes where I was building the gardens, and obviously there's really not much you can do while building gardens. So instead I talked to you about kind of the fictional history of this place. And you know, it would be fun to in the future come in and build all the stuff that I talked about, it being in this kind of Victorian history in the surrounding area to this. It would be quite fun, so if that's something you'd be interested in, then please, again, let me know. But yeah, so we are moving on to these sort of decorations to go around, just so this isn't exactly just a massive piece of rock with nothing to look at. So instead we are sticking in this. And kind of this is my first real play around with forced perspective, both in this park and really within this game. So you can see me having kind of built that 4-meter block up there, and usually in the game that would be one story. But here, that's sort of made up, you know, 2 stories, kind of with this smaller scale. And I think putting everything in at a smaller scale on here just helps to add a little bit of that extra, you know, well, je ne sais quoi. And it's just something to look at, because otherwise this area is quite barren. You know, you've got the village down one end, you've got the castle up the other, you have our thing in the middle, which sits there and spins people. But, you know, you don't really have anything aside from that. So that's why, you know, I thought, actually, we can kind of get in, we can add these little things in, and it's every little thing adds. And I know it looks a bit silly for now, and all of that, but as soon as we kind of get to a point where actually we've started to do a little bit more with it, make it look a little bit nicer, then it does all come together, and I think it's really cool. And actually, if you do play this game, I would encourage you to try out some forced perspective a little bit more. You know, I played around with it in my very, very first park project that I ever tried, and if you'd be interested in kind of having an episode of me revisiting that, because I never showed any of that sort of on YouTube or anything, that was before I started this channel. But if you would be interested in kind of me getting that all out so we can have a look at it, and then let me know. It's got a couple of nice things. It's got a launched coaster and a lovely wooden coaster, and it's got the I was able to put the very first thing I ever built in this game in there, and it is a wonderful ride. It's a version of the Wild Blue, And obviously the wild blue is sort of the in-game. I think the example that I think of is the Red Arrows ride at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I know that's not open now, but it's the only real-world example I can think of it. And kind of the whole idea of my version was that it was this flying Viking ship. It was called Flitendi Skip, which I believe is Nordic for flying ship, which I know I'm very inventive when it came to this. And obviously at that time we didn't have any fairy tale, we didn't have any pirates, so we were making do with what we had. But it was it was fun. And so if you want me to kind of go back, have a look at all of that, then please let me know, and again we can give that all a look. So coming in here now, obviously you can see that I have these platforms now with the stairs all in, and I think it is that, and then this water wheel that really make everything start to, look to scale. And I just really wanted a water wheel, if I'm being honest. There wasn't really much thought behind having a water wheel. It was just, ooh, let's do one of them. Could be cool. And spoiler alert, it was cool. And is cool. Just because, this is supposed to be a fairy tale land, but we don't really have any water in here, and we don't really have much kind of water features around the park. We've got a lake near the entrance, and then we've got a lake down in the middle of our Roman racer, but apart from that we've really got not much. So kind of coming in here and adding another water feature I really like, but don't worry, that will all be rectified within the next episode. Well, the next couple of episodes when we move on to the next area. And obviously from up here you can now see that all, and I think it looks quite fun. And then just scaling down these boulders just to fit into the landscape. Again, it's just that sort of thing where it's not much, but every little thing adds. And it's where we now get these bushes in, place them all down, that actually it starts to come into scale. Because I'm used to seeing these pieces at full scale, so your brain kind of goes, ooh, that's actually, that's smaller than, well, that's bigger than it is, it's just further away. Which is really what I was going for. And, yeah, it is quite fun. And I think we will see it at the end of this episode, in its full glory. But I do think it's quite good. And then getting these trees in here as well at this scale, I think was almost a stroke of genius. You couldn't get all of them down to the size that I wanted, but just placing a couple around, again, makes it look quite nice. And the last thing that really caps it off is these wooden pillars, because I've used these all around the park, but at their 4 meter scale. So taking them down to a 2 meter scale at this size, it just looks quite nice. And again, it does have that effect of almost tricking your brain into going, that's bigger than it is. And especially when you're over the other side of the area and you look at it all, like from back here, it looks brilliant. So there we go. And what really adds to this is, we're getting onto this now, I wanted to add more houses, but I didn't really want to do, them all by hand. So instead we're using these windmill bases and tops. And actually, by coming in and doing that, like, you end up with things like that. And that is just forced perspective at its finest. Like, if I was clever, I'd put a tiny windmill in here as well, but I didn't think that far ahead. But still, just having these houses on the hill really looks nice. And then once we've got stuff on the other side as well, I think this is all going to look really, really good. So the only downside is you'll possibly be able to see into the next area from down here. But that has nothing to do with sort of sightlines. It is all to do with the scale of the next area. Because, well, I was having a think to myself about this the other day. And obviously, this whole thing started as okay, let's do a bit of a challenge park. We'll try to make it realistically small budget park. And actually, we have grown in money since, so we can now get away with doing bigger budget things, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So obviously you can see we're just capping off this corner here with all of these pieces, and I think capping off this corner was exactly just what I needed to make this all look nice. And I think, obviously, we don't finish this episode. This is something that I'm going to do off screen, but kind of getting the framework in there, you can see how it all looks. Now, I think we are approaching the end of this time-lapse segment, which it has been a pleasure time-lapsing for you, so I will see you in real time in a moment. Right, welcome back to real time, and welcome back to the park. So, what have we done today? Well, we have built our worm mine as sort of this little transitionary area between these two areas, and almost a bit of a walk-through attraction, if you will. So this is where we will be starting our next episode, and we have also built this nice little bit of set dressing here. I really like the look of this. It's small, but it's really, really nice. I really like it. And then, of course, we've got this in the corner. Now, what I'm going to do is, between episodes, I'm just going to finish off all of this so that next we can properly start on whatever we're doing here. So I will leave it there. So if you have enjoyed this episode, then please give me a like, give me a follow, possibly even a subscribe if I'm lucky enough. And I will see you in the next episode. Ta-ta! Roll that outro.